It was a quiet day in the Vakaran Empire, as it often was. The vast, starry expanse of space stretched endlessly in every direction. The Vakaran people, proud and powerful, had ruled over the galaxy for centuries, their fleets of massive warships patrolling the reaches of their empire. No one dared challenge them, their weapons were unmatched, and their technology was centuries ahead of every other species. The Vakarans were confident that their power would never be threatened. They had crushed every enemy that came their way, and they believed no one could stand up to them. But that was before the signal arrived. IT began as a strange blip on one of their deepest communication channels, a frequency that was supposed to be secure and free from interference. At first, the Vakaran scientists thought it was just another anomaly, perhaps caused by space debris or a malfunction in the system. They had seen it before, a brief flicker of static or a brief surge in energy, followed by silence. But this time, there was something different. This time, the anomaly wasn't fading away. It was growing stronger, more persistent. The Vakaran scientists tried to trace the signal's origin, but it seemed to be coming from somewhere far beyond their reach, from a place they couldn't identify. They attempted to block it, to silence it, but the signal only intensified. It was as if something or someone was deliberately trying to get their attention. The message itself was simple, but it carried a weight that no one could ignore. It wasn't a warning or a threat, not at first. It wasn't even something the Vakarans understood. The message was clear, but its meaning remained a mystery. Humans are coming. Over and over again, the same words appeared, repeating like a clock ticking in the distance. No one knew who the humans were or where they came from, but the message was unmistakable. It was as if the universe itself was sending a signal, warning them of something they had never encountered before. For the Vakaran Council, this was an embarrassment. The thought that a threat could come from such a distant corner of the galaxy was laughable at first. Humans? The Vakarans had never heard of them, and they saw no reason to take the message seriously. It was likely some kind of hoax, a prank played by one of their rivals, or a glitch in their communication system. They decided to ignore it, assuming that it would fade as quickly as it had appeared. But the signal didn't stop. Day after day, it came through, persistent and clear. Every attempt to block it only seemed to make it louder, more urgent. It was as if the universe was trying to tell them something. The Vakaran military was on high alert. They ran simulations to determine the source of the signal, tracking every possibility, exploring every corner of the galaxy. Yet, despite their best efforts, they could find nothing. There were no signs of any fleet or any military activity nearby. There were no reports of strange ships or unusual energy signatures. It was as if the message itself had appeared from nowhere, and the more they tried to dismiss it, the more it haunted them. It was an impossible mystery, and it made the Vakaran leaders uneasy. The Vakaran people, usually so confident and secure in their dominance, began to whisper. Rumors spread among the ranks of the military, even among the civilians. Some said the humans were an ancient species, one long forgotten by the galaxy, now returning to reclaim their place among the stars. Others spoke of an unknown force, something beyond their understanding, that had found a way to bypass all their defenses. But no one knew for sure. The only thing everyone could agree on was that the signal was real. And whatever it meant, it was something the Vakarans couldn't ignore any longer. As the days passed, the Vakaran Council began to feel a strange sense of unease. They weren't used to being questioned, to being uncertain about their future. They had always been the ones in control. They had always been the ones to strike fear into others. Now, for the first time in centuries, they were beginning to feel the same fear they had once inflicted on so many others. The message was not just a warning, it was a sign that something was coming, something they couldn't understand and couldn't control. And no one knew what would happen when it arrived. The Vakaran fleet was ordered to increase patrols along the outer borders of their empire, in case the signal was leading to something real. But nothing happened. Days turned into weeks, and the signal remained a mystery. Despite their growing unease, the Vakaran leaders still refused to believe that anything could truly challenge their empire. They were wrong. They didn't know it yet, but their entire world was about to change. And then, one day, without warning, the message changed. It didn't come through the usual communication channels, but instead appeared on every screen across the Empire, every device in every home. Humans are coming. This time, there was no question of a glitch or a hoax. The words were unmistakable, and this time, the Vakaran leaders could feel something they had never felt before: terror. The Vakaran fleet, already on high alert, scrambled to prepare for something they couldn't understand. The military, usually so organized and powerful, found themselves fumbling in the face of this unknown threat. The empire that had been built on strength and fear suddenly found itself vulnerable to something they couldn't see, something they couldn't touch. The message was a warning, and they finally realized the gravity of it. They weren't just being warned about a distant, unknown enemy. They were being told that humanity was on its way, and that the Vakarans were about to face something they had never prepared for. In the silence that followed, the Vakaran leaders felt a growing sense of dread. The galaxy was vast, and they had never imagined that any force could challenge their might. But the signal had come, and it was clear now: humanity was not just coming. Humanity was coming for them. The message had spread throughout the galaxy, but in places where no one could hear it, there were beings who listened. Across the stars, hidden far from the prying eyes of the Vakaran Empire, humans had been preparing. They weren't the strong, towering figures that the Vakarans were used to. They didn't have the massive warships or the advanced weaponry that could match the might of the Vakaran fleets. But there was something about humanity that no one else had: their ability to survive, to adapt, and to fight no matter the odds. For years, humanity had quietly built its strength in the shadows of the galaxy. They were an unknown presence, working in secret, slowly gathering resources, learning from the mistakes of the past, and honing their technology. They had known that their day would come. They had known that one day, the time would arrive when they would face their enemies, and when that day came, they would be ready. The signal from the Vakarans was a moment of revelation, a message that told them the time had come to step out of the shadows. At first, it was just a handful of ships, small and insignificant compared to the great war fleets of the Vakaran. The humans didn't need the massive power that the Vakarans had grown so comfortable with. What they had was something else: determination, ingenuity, and the courage to fight for their place in the universe. The first human ships, built from a mix of scavenged materials and cutting-edge technology, were designed not to show force but to remain hidden, to be invisible to the vast tracking systems the Vakarans relied on. These ships could travel unnoticed, slipping through the cracks of the galaxy, where no one would expect them. But that quiet, secret force was about to awaken. The signal, once just a mysterious code, had sparked something within humanity. It was not just a warning or a call, it was an invitation. A challenge. The Vakarans, for all their power, had made the mistake of assuming no one would dare to defy them. But humans, unlike the other species, didn't just submit to the overwhelming forces of the universe. They fought. They survived. And now they were ready to show the galaxy what they could do. The first signs of the human awakening were subtle. Small acts of resistance, little disruptions here and there, barely noticeable on the grand scale of the galaxy. The Vakaran Empire, caught up in their own arrogance, dismissed these as insignificant. After all, who could threaten the power of the Vakaran fleets? Who could stand against their might? But soon, those small acts of rebellion grew into something far more dangerous. The humans had begun to strike back, targeting the weak points in the Vakaran Empire that they had observed for years. They didn't attack the heart of the empire; they didn't need to. Instead, they went after the outer edges, the far-flung colonies that the Vakarans took for granted. And with each strike, each victory, they grew stronger, bolder. In the heart of the Vakaran Empire, the leaders were still reeling from the mysterious message that had haunted them. They had no idea who the humans were or what they could do, but they knew one thing for certain: they had to find them. The signal that had once seemed like a passing annoyance was now becoming a very real threat. The Vakarans sent out their best scouts, their most skilled agents, to track down the source of the signal. They scoured the galaxy for any sign of the humans, but they found nothing. The humans had learned from their mistakes. They had made sure to leave no trace, no hint of their presence. Every move was calculated, every action planned in secret. And then one day, the Vakarans finally found something. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send shockwaves through their ranks. A small human ship, drifting alone in the outer reaches of Vakaran space. At first, it seemed like just another ship lost in the void. The Vakarans had seen many ships drift through their space, abandoned or destroyed by the dangers of the galaxy. But this ship was different. It was alive. It was moving, slowly but surely, toward a key Vakaran outpost. The Vakarans, eager to prove that their power had not been shaken, immediately moved to intercept the ship. They believed it was an easy target, a simple threat to neutralize. But as the human ship came closer, something strange happened. The Vakaran's tracking systems began to glitch. The ship that had been drifting alone was now surrounded by an impenetrable field, one that blocked every attempt to scan or track it. It was as though the ship had simply vanished into thin air. The Vakarans tried to engage their weapons, but they couldn't get a clear shot. No matter what they did, the human ship moved like a shadow, slipping between the cracks of the Empire's defenses. The Vakaran fleet, for all its might, had met something it could not see, something it could not fight. Inside the human ship, the crew was ready. They'd been waiting for this moment, for the chance to prove that humanity was more than just a footnote in the galaxy's history. The crew was small, but each member was determined. They were from different walks of life: engineers, soldiers, scientists, but all shared one thing in common: they were not afraid. They had trained for years for this. They had learned how to fight without ever being seen. The Vakaran Empire had taken too much for granted, and now it was time for humanity to show them what true power looked like. As the human ship approached the Vakaran outpost, it released a small, seemingly insignificant drone, one that the Vakarans never saw coming. The drone was fast, precise, and quiet. It carried a small payload, a virus designed to infiltrate the Vakaran systems, to disable their communications and their weapons. With a single, calculated strike, the virus spread through the entire outpost, shutting down their defenses in an instant. The Vakaran soldiers scrambled, trying to regain control, but it was too late. The humans had already won. They had made their point. They were here, and they were not going anywhere. The Vakarans, now fully aware that they were under attack by an enemy they couldn't see or understand, began to panic. The humans had awoken, and they were far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The message had been clear all along, and the Vakarans were beginning to realize the truth: they had underestimated humanity, and now they would pay the price. The Vakaran Empire had always prided itself on its strength, its untouchable position in the galaxy. But now, it felt as though the ground beneath them was shifting. The message, the one they had dismissed as a joke, as a glitch, had been the first sign. Now, the humans, the mysterious threat they had failed to understand, were moving in. It started slowly at first, with small skirmishes, invisible strikes that left the Vakaran forces confused and unsure. But it wasn't long before the humans showed they were serious. They had been waiting for this moment, and now they were ready to make their move. The first human ships entered Vakaran space under the cover of darkness, undetected by the massive tracking systems that usually kept the Empire safe. The Vakarans had expected an overwhelming fleet, countless ships pouring into their space from every angle. But that wasn't what they faced. Instead, the humans had come in small, compact groups, barely noticed against the vastness of the galaxy. They moved like shadows, slipping in and out of the vast stretches of space, using the Vakarans' own arrogance against them. The humans had learned how to disappear, how to be silent, how to strike when no one was looking. The first Vakaran ships that encountered the humans were confused. They didn't understand who these attackers were or where they had come from. The humans' ships weren't big or powerful, certainly not in the way the Vakarans had come to expect. But what they lacked in size, they made up for in sheer cunning. Their technology was different, unlike anything the Vakarans had seen. The humans didn't engage in the way the Vakarans had expected. They didn't open fire with overwhelming force. Instead, they struck precisely, hitting vulnerable points, attacking from angles the Vakarans had never considered. The first strike came on the outer rim of the Vakaran fleet, where a small human ship disabled a key communication relay. The Vakaran fleet, usually so quick to react, was caught off guard. With their communication lines down, they couldn't coordinate their forces. Panic spread through the ranks as the Vakarans tried desperately to restore control, but the humans didn't give them time. The humans, silent and swift, attacked again. This time, they sabotaged one of the key defense systems of a massive Vakaran battleship. The battleship, once a symbol of invincibility, was now helpless, floating in the darkness, its weapons offline. Back on the ground, the Vakaran leaders scrambled to understand what was happening. They had underestimated humanity, but now the truth was impossible to ignore. The humans were everywhere. They were on the attack, and they were attacking in ways the Vakarans couldn't comprehend. This was no ordinary invasion. The humans weren't using brute force. They didn't need to. They were using their minds, their strategy, and their determination. And that was something the Vakarans had never been prepared for. It didn't take long for the Vakaran fleet to realize the true nature of the human invasion. The humans weren't trying to destroy them in one single blow. They were wearing them down piece by piece. Every strike, every attack was carefully calculated, designed to break down their systems and leave them vulnerable. The humans didn't need to win every battle. They just needed to win enough. And they had already won the most important battle of all, the battle for control of the momentum. The Vakarans tried to regroup, calling in reinforcements from nearby sectors, but it was too late. The humans were faster. They were everywhere, slipping through the cracks of the Vakaran defenses, disrupting their plans at every turn. In the midst of this chaos, the Vakaran leaders found themselves facing a new reality. They had been wrong. The humans weren't weak. They weren't easy to defeat. They were relentless, and they were everywhere. Then, the humans launched their next move, an attack on one of the central cities of the Vakaran capital. The city was a hub of power, a place where the Empire's leaders and military strategists gathered. It was thought to be one of the safest places in the galaxy. But the humans knew better. They had studied every weak spot, every vulnerability in the Vakaran systems, and they knew exactly where to strike. As the Vakaran defenses scrambled to respond, the humans launched a devastating assault on the city's power grid. In an instant, the city went dark. Power systems failed, lights flickered out, and chaos spread. The Vakaran military, once so proud of their technological superiority, found themselves in the dark, literally and figuratively. The humans had shown them just how vulnerable they were. In the midst of the confusion, the human forces moved in, attacking the Vakaran stronghold with precision and speed. The Vakaran soldiers fought back, but they were unprepared for this new kind of warfare. The humans didn't fight fair. They didn't follow the rules. They didn't care about honor or tradition. They cared about winning. And winning was exactly what they were doing. By the time the Vakaran fleet managed to rally, the humans had already achieved their goal. The city was in ruins, the power grid destroyed, and the Vakaran leadership thrown into disarray. It was a devastating blow, one that the Vakaran Empire couldn't recover from. The humans had begun their invasion not with overwhelming force, but with strategy. They had hit the Vakaran Empire where it hurt the most, at its heart. Back in the heart of the human fleet, the leaders of the operation watched as their plan unfolded before them. They had known this would not be easy. But they also knew that the Vakarans had no idea what was coming. The humans had learned from the best. They had learned how to survive, how to adapt, and most importantly, how to fight back. And now, with the first strikes landing, the Vakarans could only watch as their empire crumbled, one battle at a time. The invasion had truly begun. The Vakaran Empire was crumbling, but the Vakarans refused to admit defeat. Every battle, every strike from the humans had been a reminder of their arrogance, of the deep mistakes they had made. The Vakarans had underestimated the humans in every way possible. But now, as the humans continued to launch relentless attacks, the Vakarans were forced to face a harsh reality. They were fighting not for conquest, not for glory, but for survival. The once invincible empire now stood on the edge of collapse, and the humans were the force pushing them closer to the abyss. In the heart of the war, the humans pressed on with a determination that surprised even their leaders. They weren't driven by hatred or revenge. They were driven by the simple need to survive. They knew the cost of failure. If they didn't win, they would be erased from history, forgotten like countless other species who had fallen before the Vakarans. But the humans were different. They didn't just fight for their own survival, they fought for the future. For the chance to prove that even the smallest and weakest could rise up and change the course of history. The humans had learned from their past, using every bit of knowledge, every scrap of technology, and every moment of experience to outwit and outmaneuver their enemies. Their forces had been small at first, barely more than whispers in the dark. But now, their numbers were growing, their tactics becoming sharper with each passing day. The Vakaran Empire, caught off guard by the humans' ability to adapt, struggled to fight back. The battle was no longer about who had the biggest weapons or the largest fleet. It was about who could outlast the other. In the skies above, the humans fought fiercely, taking on the might of the Vakaran warships. The massive, intimidating battleships of the Vakaran fleet were once thought to be unbeatable. Their size and firepower had made them symbols of strength across the galaxy. But now, they were vulnerable. The humans didn't fight them head-on. They used speed, stealth, and precision to find weaknesses, striking with surgical precision at their most vulnerable points. The first major clash came when a human ship infiltrated one of the largest Vakaran warships, a massive vessel called the Vakar Prime. The humans had learned to avoid direct confrontation, but they also knew that the Vakar Prime was a key part of the Vakaran fleet. Without it, their entire operation would be thrown into disarray. So, they had planned a daring strike and attack that no one had seen coming. The human ship, small and fast, managed to slip past the powerful shield surrounding the Vakar Prime. Once inside, it released a swarm of drones, each carrying a deadly payload. The drones moved quickly, silently, and without warning, targeting the ship's core systems. The Vakaran crew on the ship didn't even know what was happening until it was too late. In a matter of seconds, their main reactor was compromised. Explosions tore through the ship's hull, and the lights flickered out. Panic spread among the Vakaran soldiers as their once mighty warship began to disintegrate from within. The Vakar Prime fell apart. The humans quickly retreated, leaving the Vakaran forces reeling. The human ship had struck fast, disappeared into the vastness of space, and left the enemy crippled, unable to retaliate. It was a small victory, but it was enough to show the Vakarans that their power was no longer absolute. The battle for survival had shifted in favor of the humans, but the Vakarans weren't ready to surrender. In their desperation, they pulled out all the stops. They launched a massive counterattack, sending wave after wave of warships toward the humans. The sheer numbers were enough to overwhelm most fleets, but the humans weren't like other enemies. They didn't fear numbers. They had learned to fight smart, not hard. The humans didn't respond with force. They used their knowledge of Vakaran tactics to turn the tables. The Vakaran fleet, moving in for the kill, didn't realize they were being lured into a trap. Human ships, hidden in the shadows of nearby asteroids, waited until the right moment. When the Vakaran ships were close enough, the humans activated their weapons systems and struck. The battle that followed was intense. Human ships darted between asteroids, attacking from unexpected angles. The Vakaran ships fired relentlessly, but the humans were faster, more agile. With each strike, the Vakarans lost another ship, another piece of their fleet. The humans didn't care about numbers. They didn't need to fight with overwhelming power. They simply needed to survive, to stay one step ahead of their enemies. And in this battle, they did. The Vakaran forces, spread thin across the galaxy, couldn't keep up. The humans were everywhere, striking when the Vakarans least expected it, disrupting their systems, and disappearing before the Vakarans could mount a proper defense. The Vakarans began to lose their grip on control, unable to stop the rising tide of human resistance. The humans had proven something critical. It wasn't about who had the biggest fleet or the strongest weapons. It was about the will to fight, the ability to adapt, and the strength to survive against all odds. The Vakarans had underestimated the humans in every way. They had thought that sheer power would win the day, but they had forgotten one simple truth: power alone could not defeat a species that refused to be broken. And as the humans continued to fight, the Vakaran Empire felt the weight of its own failure. The battle for survival wasn't just about the survival of one species. It was about the survival of a people who had been pushed to their limits, who had nothing left to lose. The Vakarans were fighting for their empire, their way of life, but the humans were fighting for something far more powerful: their future, their freedom, and their place in the galaxy. As the final battle approached, the humans knew that this was not just about surviving. It was about winning, proving that they could stand up to any force in the galaxy. The invasion wasn't just about revenge, it was about the ultimate test of survival. And the humans were determined to pass it. The Vakaran Empire was no longer the force it once had been. In the dark expanse of space, the once proud empire now lay on the edge of total collapse. The humans, who had once been considered weak and insignificant, had shown the galaxy the true meaning of determination. One strike after another, one calculated move at a time, they had dismantled the Vakaran might piece by piece. The empire, which had believed itself untouchable, was now fighting for its very existence. The final blow came when the humans launched their most ambitious strike yet. They had infiltrated the heart of the Vakaran Empire, their central command hub, a heavily guarded station that controlled everything from military strategy to communications. For years, it had been thought to be impenetrable, a fortress no enemy could breach. The Vakaran leaders had trusted it to protect them from any threat. But the humans knew better. They had spent years studying the station, learning its weaknesses, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment had finally arrived. The human fleet, much larger now than it had been at the start of the war, moved in with precision. It wasn't just the size of the fleet that made them a force to be reckoned with, it was their strategy, their ability to adapt to any situation. The Vakaran commanders, who had once laughed at the idea of a human victory, now felt the weight of their mistakes. They had underestimated their enemies at every turn. And now, there was no way to stop the inevitable. The humans didn't approach the station directly. Instead, they circled the outskirts, using decoys and stealth technology to remain hidden from the Vakaran sensors. The station was surrounded by a vast array of defensive systems, but the humans had already anticipated this. They had learned to bypass the most powerful defenses with ease. Slowly, methodically, they disabled the outer security systems, creating a gap just wide enough for their ships to slip through. As the humans made their way inside, the Vakaran leadership, sitting comfortably in their command center, had no idea that their fate was sealed. They were distracted, confident that no one could breach the station. But then, alarms began to blare. The first wave of human infiltrators had successfully disabled the station's power grid. In an instant, all communications were cut off. The station's lights flickered out, and panic set in among the Vakaran officers. But by then, it was too late. The humans were already inside. The next few hours were a blur of chaos. Human soldiers, using a combination of advanced technology and unparalleled training, stormed through the station's corridors. The Vakaran forces, disoriented and underprepared, scrambled to respond. But the humans didn't just rely on their superior tactics, they used fear. They didn't need to overwhelm the Vakaran defenders with force. They only needed to make them question their own abilities, their own strength. With every corner turned, the humans had an answer. They were everywhere, slipping in and out of sight, cutting down any resistance in their path. Meanwhile, the Vakaran leaders were growing desperate. They tried to regroup, but their efforts were futile. Communications were down, and the backup systems were no match for the humans' relentless assault. The central command station, the heart of the Vakaran Empire, was now in the hands of the humans. It was a stunning blow, one that would send ripples across the galaxy. Without the station, the Vakarans had lost the ability to coordinate their forces. Their once mighty military, now fractured and disoriented, had no chance of resisting the humans any longer. Back on the front lines, the humans pressed forward with their final push. The Vakaran fleet, though still numerous, was falling apart. The human ships, agile and deadly, cut through the enemy ranks like a knife through butter. The Vakarans, who had once been the dominant force in the galaxy, now found themselves surrounded. Their once proud warships, crippled and battered, drifted in space, unable to defend themselves against the human onslaught. It wasn't just the loss of the central command hub that spelled the end for the Vakaran Empire. it was the loss of their spirit. The empire that had once conquered countless worlds now found itself beaten down, unable to recover from the sheer will and determination of the humans. The Vakarans had never faced an enemy like this. They had fought wars, conquered worlds, and wiped out entire civilizations. But they had never fought against a species that refused to give up, no matter how many times they were pushed down. The Vakaran leadership, once so proud and confident, now sat in ruins. The Empire's once great leaders had become shadows of their former selves, scrambling for a way to salvage what little was left. But the humans were closing in. The final battle was approaching, and the Vakarans knew they had no chance of winning. The humans made their final advance toward the capital planet of the Vakaran Empire. The mood was one of inevitability. The Vakarans had fought hard, but they had underestimated the humans at every turn. Now, the once great empire was on the brink of collapse, and the humans had secured victory. The leaders of the Vakaran Empire had no choice but to surrender, their forces shattered, their empire in ruins. The humans had won, but it wasn't just a victory of force, it was a victory of willpower, of resilience, and of hope. Against all odds, they had proven that even the smallest of species could rise up and change the course of history. The fall of the Vakaran Empire wasn't just the end of a war, it was the beginning of a new chapter for the galaxy. A chapter where humanity, once thought to be weak and insignificant, would stand tall and proud. As the Vakaran Empire fell, the galaxy stood still for a moment, watching as the power balance shifted. The Vakarans had fallen, but humanity had risen. And with that rise came the promise of a new era, one where the galaxy would never be the same again.